Welcome to the world of tomorrow.
What are you doing?
This episode we're recording right now will be broadcast and put on YouTube in the future.
Isn't all of our episodes recorded and then played in the future?
Yes, but this one is special. We are recording this episode a week in advance. Ooh.
Oh yeah, that's right guys. We are actually recording two shows today because my co-host is leaving next week for Colorado.
That's right. To Coors Field to see my Houston Astros take on the Colorado Rockies.
And I will be at home watching my Houston Astros take on the Colorado Rockies.
But Andy, why don't you tell us what's in store for this episode?
Well, Jeek, we're going to talk about our early predictions from spring training. We're also going to go over who we think is going to hold on to the divisions, who we think the wild cards are going to be, and we're also going to talk about who we think has been the biggest surprise and the biggest disappointment this year.
That's right, so kick back, relax, get your popcorn ready, and hang on for the ride. So before spring training ended, Andy and I made our picks for who do we think is going to go to the playoffs this year for the 2018 MLB season. There were times that we were right. There were times that we were wrong. Cardinals. So we are going to take the chance to look back at either how smart we were or how dumb we were with our picks. Andy, do you want to start with your picks?
No, but I guess I'll go first. So, we'll start with the National League. I picked in the National League East the Washington Nationals, because they should be better than what they are. Bryce Harper. I picked the St. Louis Cardinals, and then I picked the Arizona Diamondbacks to win the West. And then for the wild card, for the first one, I picked the Cubs, and the second one, I picked the Dodgers.
For the most part, your picks were really good. I mean, there's some little bit skepticism about the Nationals and whether or not the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers will flip to see who's going to be a wild card or who's going to be a division champion. The only really bad thing I'll say about the National League was the Cardinals, and I also made that mistake. I picked the Cardinals and Nationals as my division champions. Instead of the Diamondbacks, I picked the Dodgers to win the West. The Cubs, we both agree, should be the wild card team, and I still believe that true to this day. But my second wild card team was the Rockies. So we'll go ahead and start with the National League, and we'll discuss whether or not we want to change those picks or do we want to keep them. So starting off with the National League East, we both picked the Washington Nationals to win the National League East. Andy, would you like to keep the Nationals or would you like to change that pick?
This is one that's one of those coin flips because I feel like they're going to go on a run, but at the same time, Atlanta's been really good and Philly's been really good. So I'm not sure. It's like, do you go with old reliable or do you branch out and try to pick the young studs?
That's a good point, and it's really hard for me to decide too, but if I had to pick, I would have to go with the Atlanta Braves. Right now, they have so many hitters hitting out of their mind. Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies. If Ronald Acuna comes back healthy and he's swinging the bat like he was when he first got called up, they're a dangerous team in the National League East. Not to mention crafty veterans like Nick Markakis, Nick Markakis has always been a good hitter, but he's really shining with Atlanta right now. And not to mention their pitching and Mike Fulton-Evans, being their lone pitching all-star this year. So I have to pick the Atlanta Braves for my National League East going forward.
You know what? I'm going to branch out. I'm going to be different. I'm going to go with a young team that's starting to rebuild on the best way possible. I'm going with the Miami Marlins.
Woo! Marlins! Yeah!
No, I'm not serious about that. I'm going with the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think now that they have two solidified stars with Aaron Nola and Jake Arrieta, I think they're in real contention to compete in this division with the Nationals. So I'm going with the Philadelphia Phillies.
All right, next up will be our National League Central. We both picked the Cardinals to win the National League Central. We think the Cardinals are starting to be on the decline and lose the quote-unquote Cardinal way that made them so great for so long. And now I would like to change my pick. I am going to go swing for the fences with the Milwaukee Brewers. When they traded for Christian Yelich and signed Lorenzo Cain, I thought, okay, maybe they could be a spot wild card team or even just a really good team to not make the playoffs. but they have exceeded all these expectations, and Jesus Aguilar is batting out of his mind playing first base for them. I think they're maybe one starting pitcher away from truly being a dominant team in the National League.
As he said before, we both picked the Cardinals, and I am also going to change my pick. I'm going to go with the Chicago Cubs. As much as I like Milwaukee and I've been enjoying their story, I think the Cubs are just a little bit better than Milwaukee. I think that the Cubs will get the division, but by like one game. I think in September when they play each other, it's going to be feeling like a playoff atmosphere for them.
All right, so that will be our new picks for the National League Central. I picked the Brewers. Andy has picked the Cubs. Next, the National League West. I originally picked the Dodgers. Andy originally picked the Diamondbacks. Andy, would you like to change that pick?
In a surprising fashion, this has been the closest division. You have 4 teams separated by 4 games, with LA up half a game on Arizona, Colorado's 2 games back, and then the Giants, who are always that sleeper team, 4 games back. However, I'm going to stay with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think with Paul Goldschmidt starting to get hot again and Zach Greinke pitching like the Cy Young candidate that he was, I believe that they have enough talent to hold off the Dodgers in this division race.
And I'm going to disagree. I'm going to stay with my original pick with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I think right now the Dodgers are on the upswing. Yes, losing Corey Seager definitely hurt them and will hurt them going forward this season. However, they're getting a lot of good players back, whether it be coming back from injury or whether it be playing up to their par again. Like Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen started off the season just horrendous and looked like Ken Giles. But now he solidified himself as their go-to closer and one of the best closers in the league. Not to mention the fact that they have Manny Machado now, and that makes them a true contender, not only in the National League, but for a World Series title again.
Yeah, a true contender to lose again. I mean, yeah, as big as Manny Machado is, and the way he's been batting right now, he has a .315 average. But honestly, I think this is them just stacking the deck, and then they lose in the first round. That's my prediction.
All right, next up is our wild cards. I initially picked the Chicago Cubs to win the wild card, and I'm going to stay with that pick. I just think the Cubs could be the best team in the National League. I just think the Brewers have their number. I think the Brewers know how to beat the Cubs, and that's why they'll win the division. But I still think the Cubs, even as a wild card team, could still be an easy shoe-in to go to the World Series.
And I'm going to pick the Brewers to win the wild card. I just think with their young studs right now that they can win that playoff race. I just don't think it'll be enough to beat a team like the Diamondbacks, like the Dodgers, or like the Cubs.
Fair point. So we both have the Cubs and Brewers making the playoffs, but just in different orders. I have them winning the National League Central and Cubs winning the wild card. Andy has the Cubs winning the National League Central and the Brewers winning the wild card. Now, the final one, this is really a toss-up for a bunch of teams, is the second wild card. I picked the Colorado Rockies. I'm going to go ahead and stay with that pick. I think with this 5-game winning streak they had right before the All-Star break, really will have a huge momentum swing for them. And I think maybe you could get a starting pitcher. I know trading for pitchers doesn't exactly work in Colorado, just with the high altitude. But they have a deep enough batting lineup to compete with anybody, with Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon, Trevor Story. Not to mention, if they keep Carlos Gonzalez, I think they'll be a pretty legitimate threat to at least make the playoffs again this year.
I'm going to change my pick on the second wild card. I'm going to go with the Nationals. I don't think they're there to compete with the division, but I think they can at least make the playoffs in this sort of fashion.
One final note on the Washington Nationals is I don't see them making the playoffs. I see Bryce Harper still continuing to struggle. I think his ego has finally caught up to him. At the beginning of the season, we thought he was going to be the first $400 million player in baseball. Maybe he has a resurgence and does become that $400 million player that he wants, but if he has this bad of a down year, I don't see any teams trying to break the bank for him.
Let's start talking about our picks in the American League East. Would you like to change your pick, Jack?
So just a quick recap of what we chose for our American League picks. At the beginning of the season, we both had the Yankees winning the American League East. I had the Indians winning the American League Central. Andy had the Twins. Winning the American League Central. We both picked the Astros to win the AL West. We both picked the Red Sox to be the first wild card team. I'll admit I'm at fault here. I picked the Angels to be the second wild card team, and Andy picked the Indians to be the second wild card team. We'll go ahead and start in the East, just like we did in the National League, and we both picked the Yankees. I'm going to change that to the Boston Red Sox. I just think their batting order is better than the Yankees from top to bottom. JD Martinez is hitting lights out. Mookie Betts is looking like an MVP. Even if you're having subpar seasons from guys like Jackie Bradley Jr. and Sandy Leon. The Red Sox have a pretty lethal lineup that I dare say compares to the Astros. Now, I don't know if they're better than the Astros, I'm not going to say that, but I definitely think the Red Sox could be the best team in the American League and could finish with the best record in the American League, as they do have that right now.
So I'm also going to change my pick. I'm going with the Baltimore O's. They're only 39.5 back, and they can go on this legendary run that no one has ever seen in professional baseball. Oh my God, I can't even say that without laughing. No, I'm going to also go to the Boston Red Sox. I think that not only their lineup is more lethal than the Yankees, I think their starting pitching is much better. Other than the Yankees' number one, which is Luis Severino, I don't think that the Yankees' rotation competes. I think with Boston's rotation, with Chris Sale and David Price, they are a much better team in the East than the Yankees.
So we both did change our pick from the New York Yankees to the Boston Red Sox to win the East. Now let's go to something a little bit more interesting. The American League Central. As I alluded to earlier, you picked the Twins. That's a kind of a gamble of a pick, but would you like to change that, Mr. Andy?
Well, as much as I love to see the underdog win, I don't think that they're gonna. So I'm gonna change my pick to the Cleveland Indians. They're starting to show like they are the Cleveland Indians of old and running away with the division. So I'm gonna go ahead and change it to them.
Yeah, I would say something funny like maybe the Kansas City Royals or the Chicago White Sox. I want to see them duke it out for first place, but in reality, the American League Central is so bad that the Indians could honestly finish 500 and win the division. I mean, no disrespect to the Cleveland Indians, they're still a legitimate World Series contender as they were last year, but their competition has just decreased from last year as well. So, yeah, they'll win the Central, but maybe they'll be out in the first round. Who knows? But yeah, they'll definitely make the playoffs.
Lastly, let's talk about the American League West. Now, we both picked the Astros. I don't think we're going to change this pick, but let's humor everybody. Jack, are you going to change your pick?
Nah, I'm not going to change it. I don't know. I heard this rumor that we're going to trade and get this guy, Justin Verlander, from the Tigers.
Jack, that happened last year. You have a shirt of him.
No, but in all honesty, I think the Astros should win. Barring any catastrophic injury to a star player, the Astros should win this division.
Yeah, as do I. I think with getting Correa back and having Keuchel get back into his form, I believe that they will start running away with the division. Although Seattle has made it very interesting. There are only 5 games back, which leads us to the wild card. Now, I think, first of all, that the first wild card is going to go to the Yankees. But the second wild card is the real interesting one. Because originally I picked the Indians, and I'm going to, of course, change that pick. But the second wild card's really up for debate because you have Seattle there right now, but Oakland's only 3 games back. And they've been on a really hot streak lately. So I'm going to think about that, but I'm going to pass it to Jack.
We preface this by saying we both agree that the Yankees are going to be the first wild card. They're really good. They're maybe a starting pitcher away from truly being a dominant team ahead of the Astros. And we're going to go ahead and pass on so we can talk about the second wild card, which is much more interesting, as Andy alluded to earlier. Originally, I picked the Los Angeles Angels to be my second wild card because I saw Shohei Ohtani coming in. I truly believed in him. I was the biggest Shohei Ohtani fan until he said, I don't want to play for the Astros, went to the Angels. And then I said, I hope you have a horrible career. Just kidding. Ohtani's still my favorite Angel. I can say that. I don't like a lot of Angels, Pujols, but I'm going to go ahead and change my second wild card pick. I originally had the Angels. I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners. As previously mentioned in previous podcasts, I'm a fan of Mitch Haniger and Gene Segura. I think what they are doing this season has truly saved the Mariners. When Robinson Cano went out with that PED suspension, those two stepped up, and it showed because they both made their first 2 All-Star games in their careers. Also, guys like Nelson Cruz at 38. Yes, 38. is still putting up all-star DH numbers. If Seattle had another starting pitcher to complement James Paxton, and if Felix Hernandez was even a smidge of what he was back in 2010 when he won the Cy Young, I think that they can have a serious shot at maybe upsetting the Yankees in the first round and maybe even making it to at least the ALDS.
I'm going to go ahead and pick the Oakland A's. I just think Seattle has a reputation of collapsing in September. So I'm going to go with the hot hand. I'm going to go with the Oakland A's. So let's just end this show by what we think has been the biggest surprise in baseball and what we think has been the biggest disappointment. I think the biggest surprise for me has been the Philadelphia Phillies, that they've been able to not only maintain first place but compete in that National League East with a team like the Braves coming up and even the Nationals, who have been the forefront of the division for so long now.
And my pick for the biggest surprise will be the Milwaukee Brewers. Yes, I did allude earlier that adding Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain were going to make you better, but I never would have expected they would be competing with the Chicago Cubs. And right now the Brewers could be and are my pick to win the National League Central, and they have a very bright future going forward. But let's talk about our disappointments. Andy, in your opinion, who is the biggest disappointment of the season so far?
I mean, it's gotta be the Baltimore Orioles, right? I don't know what happened that made them 40 games back, but I'm gonna go with the O's just because they were a playoff team for the last 7 years, and they completely collapsed. Their hitting core is gone. Chris Davis can't hit a ball with a tennis racket. So, yeah, I'm gonna pick the Baltimore Orioles. I do believe that's why Manny Machado has left and did not want to stay in Baltimore.
I do have to agree with you that the Baltimore Orioles are the most disappointing team in baseball. I mean, this team had legitimate playoff expectations. They went out and signed some good guys, and they went out and got a guy like Alex Cobb and paid him a pretty hefty contract so that way he could solidify that rotation. So I do see that point, but in my opinion, the most disappointing team in baseball right now is the Washington Nationals. And especially Bryce Harper. I think he's having the most disappointing season of any baseball player right now. He is hitting .214. Yeah, his power numbers are still there at 23 home runs and 54 RBIs, but he is not playing like he wants a $400 million contract. And I know that's not Bryce Harper. I know he's the most competitive person in the game. And as a whole for his performance, the Washington Nationals have suffered. Yes, Howie Kendrick got hurt. Yes, Steven Strasburg got hurt. But there are guys like Matt Scherzer that are going out there every day and just putting up godly numbers only for no run support. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that the Mets and the Marlins are so terrible, they might be the worst team in their division. But that's another topic for another day. And that'll do it for this episode of the J&J Double Play Podcast. Thank you for listening. And if you have any other baseball picks you'd like to share with us, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and we look forward to hearing you next week.